Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. I'm Mark Cook, along with my boss, Scott Reynolds. And,
hello.
And intern John Ledyard. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying my experience as an intern over at Raymond James Stadium today, where I am 2-0. Not a big deal at all. Not a big deal, but 2-0 is the record for me at Raymond James Stadium.
And everybody has to know by now, this podcast is powered by our good friends at Celsius.
You know, you got Peach Vibe?
I got it, Scott. My victory Peach Vibe. I know everyone was wondering.
Yeah. Well, tonight I am not drinking this orange. You know why? Because I had one at the stadium to
That's
get
right.
Right.
So I was doing a little product placement at the stadium.
Wow.
You know, I thought orange juice, orange Celsius in the morning. I'm going to go with orange Celsius. Let's get this Sunday started off right. And certainly that was the case. When you look at this Buccaneer team, it seems like they've been energized by Celsius too, and that's what Celsius does. It energizes your body for the active lifestyle. And the great thing about it is no sugar, no preservatives. But I started my day off with Celsius. John, you know, you're ending the night with the Celsius. Mark, yep. What flavor are you partaking in today?
What I'm doing, grapefruit.
Okay.
My
Excellent.
favorite. Sparkling grapefruit, of course.
Wow, I got to try that one.
Excellent. And now here's the thing, Bucs fans. If you haven't tried Celsius yet, what are you waiting for? We love the comments and feedback that we've been getting, not just here in the Pewter Report podcast, but on Twitter too. So we'd love to hear about your Celsius experience. What's your favorite flavor? There's a whole bunch of them. They just came out with a new strawberry guava, I believe, or strawberry kiwi, I think. One of the
wow. Kiwi guava.
Kiwi guava, I got that one. Kiwi guava.
Oh, is there a new one? Okay.
Yeah, there's like an even newer one.
Oh.
And that's the cool thing with Celsius. They're always coming out with new flavors. And if you don't know which flavor you want to try, well, just get the variety pack. And you can do that by clicking on the Celsius banners on pewterreport.com. That'll take you to Amazon, where you can buy them buy that variety pack, or you can buy them in bulk if you know which flavor is your favorite. And I've got multiple favorites. The orange being the tops. I love the grape. The peach vibe, John, you kind of got me hooked on that too. That's a good one. But guys, seriously, I think that the Buccaneers, they've really come to play in the first quarter, and whether it's with Celsius or whatever, they've been energized, and we've now seen the Buccaneers not trail in any of the last 8 quarters. These last 2 games, they have come out like gangbusters in the first quarter. Yeah. And let's talk about the first quarter of, in case you didn't know, a Bucs 44-27 win over the Falcons, sweeping the Falcons. They've now swept the Falcons, swept the Panthers this year. Of course, they got swept by the Saints, but they locked up that 5th seed, finished 11-5. More importantly, guys, they finished 5-3 at Raymond James Stadium. They have not had a winning record at Ray J since dating back to 2008, which was the last year of the John Gruden era. They finished 9-7 that year, missed the playoffs. Appreciate that Buck 977. Got a Celsius variety pack. Watermelon. Yeah, it's my wife's favorite. Ashley loves watermelon. But guys, let's talk about that first quarter, because a lot happened that we have to unpack. You know, it started off looking great for Mike Evans, did it not, gentlemen?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, they really did whatever they wanted throughout the entire game on offense, really. But the way things started with Mike Evans, Scott, I mean, honestly, you were thinking this guy could have like a 200-yard day, and obviously, you know, he's getting open against man coverage. The schemes were great. Play calling, you know, other than a couple of 2nd and 10 runs, the kill, you know, they were hitting on all cylinders. And then, you know, you have this Mike Evans freak hyperextension injury, and he drops a touchdown, and they end up having to kick the field goal on that. As he gets hurt, obviously, and then they end up kicking the field goal on that drive. And it didn't really end up throwing the team off, actually. I kind of wondered after that possession if it would end up throwing them off. They ended up rolling the whole game. But, man, it was – I was there, obviously, at the stadium. I've only been to Ray J twice now, but it was such a deflating – I mean, the dude is just loved and adored. Yeah. And right after he breaks the record, and they know what's kind of next in like the playoffs, and he's never played in a playoff game. And it was just like the worst moment you could imagine in that situation. Honestly, like a pick six the other way would have been less deflated. I mean, it was just that air was just out of the whole place. And since then, the news has trended a little bit better, which seems optimistic that it isn't like a long-term damage. But playing this week in the playoff game, which is critical, it seems like it's in doubt a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the thing too, just so our readers, listeners, viewers know, we're taping this at 7:30, and as of right now, we've heard an interesting, positive feedback, I guess, from a team source. Cautiously optimistic is what we've been told about Evans' injury. He did not return to the game. He didn't even return to the sidelines. They took him to get an MRI directly after that injury. They're going to know more in a couple of days. Obviously, with the knee injury, there can be swelling. So they're going to be taking some MRIs and seeing what happens. Right now, though, they're cautiously optimistic. They're taking it day to day. Mike Evans has played through a ton of injuries. He's a warrior. I don't know that he would be able to play in this weekend's game. Opponent yet unknown. It'll be determined whether if Washington wins tonight, they will be the opponent. If they lose, a 6-10 New York Giants team will host the Buccaneers next weekend. It's crazy, but I would suspect Mike Evans will certainly be out for 1 week. But at least the initial feedback we've gotten from the team, unless something takes a turn for the worst on some of these medical evaluations, maybe he's still available for the second playoff game should the Bucs advance.
And we should mention, too, that this podcast will be going live all this week, just like we have been, except we'll be live at 7:30. So as the playoffs come, we are taking the show to prime time this week for the playoffs. So we'll be on, obviously, tonight. We're on at 7:30, and then we'll be live again tomorrow night at 7:30. So we'll be able to talk at length about whatever update we've received about Mike Evans, about the potential playoff matchup, about the Bucs statistically where they finished out the season compared to other teams, other players, and so on and so forth. So that show tomorrow, and we'll take a lot of your questions and answer them as well, too, on tomorrow night's show. So that'll be 7:30 Monday night. And then Wednesday night will also be on 7:30. Scott and I will preview the upcoming playoff game against whoever the Bucs opponent is. It'll either be the Giants or Washington. It'll be one of those two teams. And so we'll preview that matchup in depth on Wednesday's show, and then Thursday we'll have a guest helping to further kind of break down the playoff game and thoughts about the Bucs and what's changed since the bye and so on and so forth. And so there's going to be a lot of great stuff coming this week, and it's all going to be 7:30 p.m. So just adjust your calendars a little bit to when we're going live. But hopefully for some of you coming back from work, that time slot actually helps you a little bit. Get home, get settled in, get your dinner, get your kids down or whatever, and then hopefully to be able to tune into the podcast. We're hoping that that'll help everybody kind of jump in here for the playoff push as we all kind of have fun during this week together.
And speaking of help, Mark, Joshua chimes in with our first super chat of the day. Anyone who thought the Bucs would let Godwin go in the offseason should watch this game and understand why that's not happening. Speak to Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown stepping up after Mike Evans' absence and just how powerful that 1-2 punch was for Tom Brady today, Mark.
Well, I will do that, Scott. First of all, I want to say there was one guy on this podcast who did not like the Antonio Brown signing. He's in the top left corner up there. It's named. It rhymes with Lon Jedyard, but anyway.
Wasn't all three of us in that boat?
No. I mean, I was skeptical. I was skeptical about it. But no. Go back and look. I said it often. We saw the Buccaneers lose Mike Evans and Chris Godwin down the stretch last year. You know, if this guy isn't a knucklehead and he can help the football team, what's it going to hurt having some insurance on here? And thank goodness he was on the team today. Number two, I want to point out what I've been saying is the Buccaneers were trying to get Mike Evans the football to get him that record today, and you saw the guy. Just get the guy the football whenever he's on the football field. He could have had a 200-yard day today if he didn't get hurt. But really, guys, both of those guys really stood up. Chris Godwin is a guy that does. I wrote this in the most impressive. I put him on the list, and you know, although the stats don't come anywhere near last year's numbers, it may be a better year this year because he's battled through injuries. He's a tough guy. He's come up clutch. He just doesn't drop the football at all, and he does so much of the dirty work that we don't see all the time unless you're really watching him on plays that aren't necessarily going to him. He's just a tough SOB and a great guy. And I agree. I think the Buccaneers absolutely make him a priority as far as keeping him. You can't let that guy walk. I mean, he's not just a guy you can replace. I like Tyler Johnson. We like Scotty Miller to agree, but there's just one Chris Godwin on this football team, and thank goodness he's healthy. Hopefully Mike Evans can bounce back. We know Mike Evans is as tough as they come to because he played earlier this year. A lot of receivers would not have played in some of those games that Mike Evans played in earlier this year, but he toughed it out. So it may not be the worst thing in the world. Give him the week off. I mean, and if he can come back in a divisional game, if they end up beating the Washington football team, and that's who it'll be.
Or the Giants,
I think it's going to be Washington. But either way, they've already beaten the Giants. We know that they can they can beat the Giants. Either one of those games look favorable right now for the Buccaneers, even if Mike Evans doesn't play, because of Godwin and Antonio Brown.
Well, let me jump in and just say that the Antonio Brown signing had nothing. What my criticism of it had nothing to do with Antonio Brown on the field, though.
Yeah,
Mark.
No, I know, and I'm just giving you a hard time.
Right,
that's what I do. Right.
I know, but I hear you, and I appreciate that hard time. And I will return the favor in asking you what your evaluation of Tom Brady's performance was today, because the fans are waiting with bated breath to hear your analysis.
The guy was unflappable. I mean, he took one sack because Donovan Smith decided that nobody needed to block Dante Fowler Jr. Just said, you know what, screw it, we're going to give him the one sack. Dante may have paid him a little bit to miss that one, but other than that, I mean, the guy was just on fire. There were, a couple balls a little bit off target, but I mean, that throw to Chris Godwin that was your game changer, John, in your game changer article. People need to go to Pewter Report and read that right now. That throw, I don't know. I've criticized Tom Brady maybe a little bit for being a tad conservative at times. Looking at the check down, not doing the Jameis, let's chunk it down the field and give our guy a chance. He's been doing that a lot lately, and that throw to Godwin, a lot of guys don't throw that football a lot.
Catch by Godwin.
Yeah.
Oh my
gosh.
But Scott, we can go back to Chris Godwin's first training camp, very first training camp. Those are the things we saw. Those are the types of catches we saw every day in his first two training camps. I remember almost every single day there was a highlight reel catch. I mean, the guy is just an amazing receiver, and the only thing keeping him from being a 1,500-yard receiver is the fact that there is a Mike Evans on this team and an Antonio Brown and a Scotty Miller and a Rob Gronkowski. Because if he was, the top receiver without a lot of help around him, he would get the ball a lot more and he would be able to showcase, and his stats would be even better than they are.
Yeah, I mean, in 11 games this season, the numbers he's put up, Scott, are pretty crazy. I mean, Chris Godwin's would kind of just quietly produced, 65 catches, 840 yards, 7 touchdowns. Remember, he didn't even play 11 full games. He missed the end of the Broncos game last half, most of that second half. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a guy that I think there's such a high ceiling for him. And what's crazy about this offseason is that he only has a 1,000-yard season, and the market for wide receivers is not going to be great this offseason because we've had 3 straight unbelievable draft classes. We'll have another one this year, another unbelievable draft class, and there's tons of wide receivers hitting the market. So it's going to help the Bucs. I know we don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but it's going to help them be able to get him for a reason.
Chris Godwin wants to stay in Tampa.
Right.
He was playing with Tom Brady, for Bruce Arians, and with Mike Evans. So he wants.
Why wouldn't he? I mean, Arians is the perfect coach for him, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think the thing too is when you look at Godwin, don't be surprised if they can't work out a deal long term that he gets the franchise tag. You heard it first here. So just keep an eye on that. Speaking of statistics, let me just rattle off a couple things here. Against the Falcons in 2 games, Tom Brady threw for 390 yards and 2 touchdowns just a couple weeks ago against the Falcons, then tops it with 399 yards and 4 touchdowns today. Since the bye week, Tom Brady has completed 94 of 136 passes. That's 69%. For 1,333 yards with 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. And this offense has gone from scoring 26 points against the Vikings to 31 points against the Falcons to 47 points against the Lions to 44 against the Falcons again, putting up 303 yards, 416 yards, 588 yards, and 485 yards. So they're averaging 448 yards, 37 points per game, John and Mark, since the bye week. Now, to put that in perspective, the Bucs for the season ended up 30.8 points per game. That's the third highest in the league behind Green Bay and Buffalo. But they're averaging since the bye week 37 points per game, a touchdown more than their season average. This is the hottest offense heading into the postseason right now in the NFC, and that maybe includes Green Bay. And if you want to give Green Bay the slight edge, that's fine. But we're talking like 1A and 1B right now between Tampa Bay and Green Bay from an offensive firepower standpoint.
Yeah, I would not give Green Bay I wouldn't give Green Bay the edge. I would say Tampa Bay. I mean, they just statistically, I don't think even Green Bay touches those guys right now. I mean, they have a little bit. I mean, I don't know why you say that, Scott. I mean, maybe because I have this 1977 license plate right here, or better yet, this is even more old school. How about that one?
And that's when the Packers and Bucs were both in the NFC Central Division, or as Warren Sapp would say, the NFC Norris Division.
Right. The Lynn Dickey years.
Yeah.
Don
this
Mikowski
is interesting.
years.
Haas Wajuk points out that I don't know where, and Haas, you can mention if you saw this stat somewhere, how many play action, or if you just counted this yourself going back through the game, but 9 play action calls out of 42 dropbacks, 3 play actions on the opening drive, though. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I think honestly, 9 play actions for them is pretty solid for the Bucs offense. But yeah, they were trending kind of up. But I wonder almost in this game if they just were like, it doesn't even matter. Like, I mean, they did whatever they wanted in the past game. There were a couple drops, a couple not on the same page. Even AB and Tom Brady not always on the same page. In the vertical routes and stuff. A couple of those. But I mean, there was a couple like near catches in the back of the end zone, but there wasn't anything where you were like, man, the Falcons are just shutting down. That, you know what I mean? Like, so I wonder if they just thought they could give Tom Brady opportunity to see the whole field on some straight dropbacks, and that was why. I mean, play action's a great tool, but if you have other things that are working, you can use those things too. But really interesting how they approach this game. Scott, you and I were talking before the game, and we said, this is a game where we could see them running the football. Auclair was typically when they've gone in pass heavy to a game. Hudson's been up and Auclair's been down, and they switched to this, and that was just one thing. And then, Rojo's back, and so, you want to protect Brady maybe some, get Evans' yards, and then, but nope, they were going to air it out all game. I mean, they called a ton of passes. I just know Brady dropped back, I think, 42 times in this game. They ran the ball 22 total times. Yeah. Brady actually ran a couple of those too. So it was, not the game plan that we I think he dropped back more than 42 times, I guess. But yeah, it was not kind of the game plan that we were anticipating, much to our happiness now that, obviously wanted Brady to be healthy. But
and you know what, John, it's interesting, right? Because we were expecting, especially in the fourth quarter with those last 2 possessions, that as we saw Tom Brady get 40 touchdown passes, which set not just a Bucs single season record, but also broke Peyton Manning's previous record of 37 touchdown passes with a new team. Yeah. So Brady, he upstaged Peyton Manning again today with an NFL record of his own. But we were expecting to see Ronald Jones kind of get force-fed the ball at the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. Yeah. When Tampa Bay was up, and Mark, he finished with 78 yards on 12 carries. 6.5 yards, did score the touchdown there in the fourth quarter. But were you guys surprised that Arians didn't try to get Rojo that 1,000 yards? Was this a little bit of a payback for the COVID incident, or what were your thoughts? I mean,
no, I was completely shocked. Inside of 5 minutes when the Buccaneers had the ball a couple times, I thought for sure, all right, here we are. In fact, I was counting how many yards Rojo had and where the ball was after the Sean Murphy bunting fumble, thinking, okay, can he get it right here if he carries it all the way in the end zone on 6 carries or whatever it was. So, yeah, I was surprised. I'll say this. Rojo was running like he wanted that 1,000 yards, though. I mean, that guy, I love the aggressiveness and the way he ran the football today.
Yeah, and it's just a couple of interesting things. First of all, John, you and I were talking before the game at the stadium that the NFL is going to control the playoff schedule, right? They're going to decide which teams play when. And you got to think that it's not like the NFL picks favorites, but they pick favorites. And I think Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, that's one of those teams that the NFL is rooting for in the playoffs to advance, just for ratings. Just like how I'm sure the NFL is overjoyed that the Ravens made it because Lamar Jackson, right? People wanted to see Lamar Jackson in the postseason. So it's
more
not
than they want to see Tua and the Dolphins defense.
Right. It's not that they rig the games or anything, but what they do rig is they rig the playoff schedule. And I wouldn't be surprised, matter of fact, I'd be disappointed if the Buccaneers got a Saturday playoff game, because I think that the NFL would love to see Devin White come off the COVID list, and he would be eligible on Sunday, at least from what I'm hearing right now. If the game was on Saturday, he would not meet that 10-day quarantine threshold, but that the league has set for COVID protocols. But if the game was on Sunday, he would. And I believe it's the exact same thing for Alvin Kamara in New Orleans. So I think the league might put the Bucs and the Saints, those respective playoff games, on Sunday. And it'll be interesting to see which team gets that primetime Sunday game. But your thoughts on that, guys?
Well, I think the Saturday game will be a nighttime primetime game. I don't know about the Sunday schedule. Normally, those are their afternoon. Well, you know what?
Well, there's three games now.
Yeah, you're right, because they've added an additional wild card game. So you're right. Yeah. It very well could be. I think you're right on the money, Scott. If they're looking for ratings, the NFL is hoping the Giants win, or Washington loses, probably in the Giants. It's just a huge TV market. Giants and Brady, I think, would draw bigger numbers than Washington.
Well, there's the history with Brady and the Giants too. Plus, all of Boston will be watching. With the Patriots out, all of Boston will be Bucs fans. Yeah, and they'll all be cheering for it. So that's a big market.
I don't know if you guys saw the TV broadcast, but there were actually people there in the stadium today wearing Brady jerseys. I just shake my head sometimes. I mean, that's good though. I mean, whatever. They come. Yeah.
I saw some walking into the stadium. They weren't Bucs number 12 jerseys. They were Patriot number 12 jerseys. So Matthew Ferrant, we thank you for your £5 super chat. I know they've been beating teams with losing records in December, but the confidence, momentum, and cohesiveness they have right now is awesome, especially on the offensive side of the ball. John and Mark, we saw today, without Devin White, without Shaq Barrett, this team really has virtually no pass rush. Only Ndamukong Suh had 1 sack today.
Can I say one thing though, Scott? There were probably 6 blatant holes on the Buccaneers defensive line. Now, I'll say this: they weren't calling holes on the Buccaneer offensive line either, so they were fair both ways. But I mean, I was screaming at my
interference penalties today. That's the only thing they called.
Right. I mean, there were a number of missed holding calls where Ryan, I think, would have been sacked, and maybe a couple going the other way as well. But at least they didn't call 4 on the Buccaneers offensive line and none on the Falcons. But yeah,
both offensive lines dominated today. I mean, when you have Grady Jarrett and Shaq Barrett out, I guess that's what happens. But dominant.
We want to thank Joshua for a super chat, $4.99. Seemed like Bucs traded the dunk, well, I'd say the dink and dunk, to stop Ridley and the big plays to force Atlanta to convert in the red zone, where they've had some issues this year. And I think that the Bucs came through with enough stops inside the red zone. And even when the Falcons scored, like on that Hayden Hurst touchdown, it came on 4th down.
Yeah.
And so I thought the Buccaneers played well enough in the red zone, holding the Falcons to some field goals. And, of course, the Bucs had to have some field goals of their own. Amazingly, Tampa Bay didn't even punt the ball once today. Went the entire game without punting. So it was a very clean game offensively for the Buccaneers. Defensively, though, they need Devin White and Shaq Barrett back for the
Carlton Davis. Don't forget Carlton Davis. You know what, though? Hats off to Sean Murphy-Bunting for having his worst game against the Falcons 3 weeks ago to having his best game of the season today. Now, again, John, you'll break down the tape a little bit more. I don't know how often he was matched up specifically on Calvin Ridley. I think the Buccaneers, that's good though. I mean, he Ridley didn't kill the Buccaneers, in other words, but he ended up with 6 tackles on the day. He had that big forced fumble and the fumble recovery. He also had a pass breakup. So I thought,
on 3rd down, that was a huge.
So he hats off to him for bouncing back, because here's a guy that we've all talked about all season long, or at least the last half of the season. And if this team is going to go and be successful in the playoffs, they're going to need their secondary to play better. It wasn't great today, but having Carlton Davis back, and if Sean Murphy-Bunting can play with some of that confidence that he finished the year with last year, that bodes well for the defense trending in the right direction in the playoffs, in my opinion.
John, and Mark, that forced fumble recovery.
Yeah.
I was going to say. Do you know what caused that forced fumble recovery, Mark? Because Scott and I may have had a little something to do with that. I mean,
we did.
We're up there in the booth, and we were like, I don't even remember. We were up in the press box, and we were like, Sean Murphy Bunting I just don't know what, because remember they had that 2nd and 17 after their sack, immediately give it up. And Murphy Bunting was not great. That he was good for him, and he made 2 big plays. We're all on the same page there but then he comes back as we're speaking and talking about how you get him off the field. And when Carlton Davis is that, he comes up and makes this huge play on the drag route and strips the ball, recovers it. And we're like, oh, my.
It was
literally
after we were dogging SMB.
But you know what? Sometimes, guys, those are the things that have to happen for a guy to just, football is so mental too, obviously. I asked him
it after the game too, because
you
hammered him with your question,
and I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but I was just trying to be honest. And he was, and actually he and I chatted after the game about that specifically, and he was like, "No, I understand your job. You have to ask those questions," and I was like, "Okay, cool." But hopefully, it helps him turn a corner because we know he has the physical skills to do things. I love the fact that he admitted that his technique was terrible. And as soon as he said that, the first thing I thought of, John, was you, because you talked about it right after that game that, his technique and he was letting guys get off the line of scrimmage. That was the big thing. And he brought that up. You brought that up in that podcast that, he was just letting guys free, or actually, I think you brought it up in maybe your Bucs briefing the following week or whenever it was. He just lets guys off the line of scrimmage too easily, and then he's in a trail position. And he literally answered that question basically like your article.
He was great. I mean, it is easy to see why they are so impressed with who Sean Murphy Bunting is as a person and why they keep giving him chance after chance after chance. And I still have my doubts that one game doesn't change that, a couple of plays don't change how I feel. I'm a sample size guy. I say that all the time. Like, I'm going to need to see consistent play trending in the right direction. But for a game, he played about as well as I thought he could have played today and made a couple key plays. So it's a good sign, trending in the right direction. They're not going to go away from him. Like I said, we can talk about how Ross Cockrell's been better and how we'd like to see Cockrell, Dean, and Davis as the top 3 guys. It's just not going to happen. He's going to be one of the guys. He's got to play consistently better. I think that defense is terrifying right now, to be honest. I know today they were without some guys. I'm not going to be too critical of them because of that, because they're key guys. I mean, their best pass rusher and your best corner. When you're not super deep at either spot, the Bucs are not deep defensively other than safety. It's not going to be a great day for you. And so there's definitely some, I understand that. I'm not going to be too, but they really haven't played well the second half of the season. And the offense is really having to carry things now. They look like they're capable of it, guys. Though. That's the exciting thing.
And you know what, John? I was thinking about this during the game. If the Buccaneers, it all comes down to you look at the Buccaneers' wins and you look at their losses. If Tom Brady is protected and has time, there's not a defense in the NFL that's going to stop him. There's too many weapons, and he's too good. So whoever they play, whether it's Washington, whether it's the Giants, whether then it's on to New Orleans or Green Bay, wherever it may be, they've got to be at their best at the offensive line. If they do that, I don't care if the defense struggles a little bit because they can beat anybody in the NFL with their offense when Tom Brady has time and is protected well.
I agree with you completely.
And if you're just joining our live podcast tonight, we're streaming on YouTube. And if you haven't yet, go to YouTube, click on Pewter Report TV, hit subscribe, and then hit notifications. And every time we're on, and we're going to be on at 7:30 this week, 7:30 Monday, for the Bruce Arians day after game press conference review. We'll have a Mike Evans update. I'm going to give you a Mike Evans update real quick here in just a second. But then we're also on Wednesday and Thursday night at 7:30. So we're in prime time this week with the Bucs making the playoffs. So make sure you adjust your schedules accordingly and join us here live. So again, if you missed the early part of the show, latest update we have is the Bucs are actually cautiously optimistic about Mike Evans' knee injury. He sustained that in the first quarter after that drop touchdown pass. The ground gave way. His left knee buckled. It looks scary. But right now, they'll know more in a couple of days. He did not return to the game. Obviously, didn't return to the stadium. He actually left and got an MRI. They'll continue to do some testing this week, but cautiously optimistic. Day to day is what I'm hearing right now. So we'll have to cross our fingers and hope and see what happens with Evans. One thing that just happened as these afternoon games concluded the Bucs' 2021 opponents are now known. You can check out that story on PeterReport.com. The quick rundown at home, and you know the three division teams, obviously home and away, Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans. But at home, with the Bucs playing both the NFC East and AFC East schedules at home, that means the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, and also the Chicago Bears as the second place team in the North. Those AFC teams are going to be playing at home, the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The away opponents, obviously Atlanta, Carolina, New Orleans. The divisional opponents, they're playing Washington at home. They're playing the Eagles, away. These are the away teams. Washington away, Philadelphia away, New England Patriots away. So there you go. Tom Brady returning to Gillette Stadium to face Bill Belichick. The New York Jets, which our own Matt Matera will like, and then the LA Rams. So the Bucs will be playing the Rams 3 years in a row. They'll be playing the Giants 4 years in a row. And it'd be interesting to see how the playoffs shake out, because whoever they play, whether it's the Giants or the Washington football team, they'll be having a rematch next year, either at Ray J if it is the Giants, if it's the Washington football team, it'll be in D.C. So that news just came out with those with the conclusion of those afternoon games. You can check out that story on PeterReport.com as well.
News coming out right now.
Go ahead,
actually,
Johnny.
Jay Glazer just reported that Mike Evans has a hyperextended knee. This is our own Taylor Jenkins tweeting this right now. Just reported that Mike Evans has a hyperextended knee. The MRI didn't show any ligament damage, and the team is optimistic he can play in the first round of the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, stiffness and mobility is going to be huge, but I can't tell you all, like, sitting next to Scott in the press box. I mean, it's hard because you try to be professional, but how can you be Mike Evans is an awesome dude. You know, he's a great leader. You know, guys like you guys have covered him for years.
Yep.
And you've wanted more than anything for him to be able to make the playoffs and play in the playoffs. And then he breaks the record next play, thing. And in a game that, it mattered, but at the end of the day, matter, but it was just deflating.
I don't even try and be not a fan of Mike Evans. I told you guys this, I think, last week. My favorite Buccaneer, if I take the reporter hat off and I put the orange and white hat on, it's definitely Mike Evans. I've been around this guy enough outside of football, besides what we've seen on the football field. He's easily my favorite football player since 2014 when this guy was drafted. And Scott and I have been there the night he was drafted. We were on the conference call, the video conference call. We were there the very next day when he was at the podium at one Buccaneer place, and we've seen every snap this guy's had. And he's always been a stand-up guy in the locker room. I was talking to some of the PR people this week about Mike Evans, and even when he doesn't want to do an interview, he'll still do the interview. You know what I mean? He's just that kind of guy. He wants to please.
He's a human being. He's phenomenal. And the crazy thing is right now, and here's my five, and people have their own, but you look at the top 5 Buccaneers of all time, right? I think in most people's top 5, you're looking at obviously the Hall of Famers, right? You're looking at Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, Leroy Selman, in no particular order. Don't want to offend anybody. Rondé Barber, I think just with his longevity, he's in the top 4. That 5 spot's kind of fluid, whether it's Hardy Nickerson, Mike Allside, whoever. But I tell you, when it's all said and done, Mike Evans, I think, might end up as in that top 5. I think he cemented his Hall of Fame status with that record today.
Oh yes.
That's not a Buccaneer record. Listen, the NFL's been playing for over 100 years. Now, they haven't always thrown the football, but for what he did, accomplish, and he accomplished this on some really, really bad football teams too, to be honest with you. I mean, he didn't have Tom Brady throwing to him since 2014. I mean, he had the Josh McCowns of the world, and then Jameis, and then whoever else in between, Glennon. So he's been able to adapt and succeed and play well and not really have any drop off, and just a good guy all around, just a great guy. And I'm happy. That's great news, because I've seen Buccaneer players get carted off the field and injuries, and you're like, well, damn, that's too bad. But this one really shook me, because number one, of how it happened and when it happened, right after getting that record, and the fact that now the playoffs are coming, and you talk about a guy that deserves to be on the field when the playoffs start. It's Mike Evans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what's great about this, guys, obviously Evans if he's able to come back and Glazer's right, and Glazer's not he's not wrong very often. So we take a lot of solace in what he says for sure. But if he comes back, it becomes this thing, guys, where the Bucs offense, now that they are kind of more cohesive, consistent unit, it becomes really impossible to kind of, how do you stop this team without getting some breaks? I mean, the Falcons got one break today, and honestly, for a while there, it looked like that would be the only one they need. I mean, the Bucs had one possession in the third quarter, and they had gone. I mean, the Falcons had scored at the end of the first half, then they got the ball at the beginning of the second half. Then the Bucs had the long drive and the fumble or the interception off Scotty Miller's hands, and then the Falcons scored again, and then it was the Bucs right at the end of the third quarter. They got the ball back with like 20 seconds left in the third quarter, and so it was that stretch of football where the game swung on, right? And then as soon as the Bucs got their possessions back, there was no way. I mean, Atlanta couldn't do anything to stop them. And remember, this is not a slouch Atlanta defense that started the season. And it's not like they were coming off one good game just against the Chiefs either. This team was playing legitimately good football over the second half of the season against quality opponents. I mean, they were holding the Saints offense down. I know there were meetings without Breeze, but Breeze isn't exactly lighting it up for the Saints offense. It's the scheme and Kamara and those guys that are lighting it up. I mean, 24, 21 points they held the Saints to in those games. Held the Raiders, which is a very explosive offense, to 6 points in that game. The Chargers, a super explosive offense, to 20 points. And the way those guys, and then the Chiefs to 17. The Bucs scoreless for half. But again, 2 games against the Bucs, they've given up 75 points in those 2 games.
Hey, speaking of points, I would be remiss if we didn't point out the fact that the Buccaneers shattered their scoring mark for a single season. They had 458 points coming into today's game, I believe, and they finished now with 592 points.
Yeah,
an absolutely astonishing record for the Buccaneers. And again, they finished the season averaging 30.8 points per game, and they've now been averaging, since the bye week, 37 points per game heading into the playoffs. This offense is hotter than hot right now.
Yeah, it's and people are going to talk, and I see already a comment in there about not overreacting. The Bucs got floored against winning teams. Well, the Bucs beat beat one playoff team in the Packers, and they lost to several other playoff teams this season. Some of those games were close. I think we all agree, regardless of opponent, they were not the Bucs that we see right now. They were not. The team coming out of the bye is a different team. They're different, not just in the fact that the players are more on the same page. They are different in their philosophy. They are throwing the ball on early downs. They're getting first downs on first down and on second down. They are going more play action. I wrote an article this past week about it. You can look at all the numbers. I'm not making it up. It's not an overreaction to results. It's a look at the process. The results, you're right. Whoever said that, the comment on that, you're right. Results can vary month to month, week to week, and it could mean nothing. But process always means something. Process always means something as long as you stick with that process. And so the Bucs process has improved. Will they stick with it? Will they turn the ball over 4 times in a game and that could make the difference? Sure. It doesn't mean the Bucs are winning the Super Bowl, but it does mean this is not the team that lost to the Rams. It's not the team that lost to the Saints. It's not the same team right now, nor is the Rams the same team from that time. And no one would disagree with that. This is not the same Rams team, and even with or without Goff. So it's different. It changes over time. People, every time I put out power rankings, people are like, oh, what happened? This team beat this team in week 3. How can you have them over this team? Because football changes, not the same. One result is not bigger than the big picture. And right now the Bucs are clearly a better team than the Rams and better team than Chicago and maybe a better team than Seattle and some of the other teams in the NFC. You could make a conversation that the Bucs are the hottest team in the NFC right now. Doesn't mean they won't lose in a 1-game playoff. Football is a fickle game. It doesn't mean those things. And it's not, it didn't age well. I hate those comments. Like, we are looking at the process. We are not looking at the Bucs being 11-5 and winning 4 straight games. We're looking at how they did it, and how they did it shows that they are doing a ton of things the right way, and it means good things for this team moving forward. It doesn't make them perfect, just means good things moving forward.
As much as you were willing to say that the Bucs are hotter than the Packers right now, looking at the statistics now, the Packers swept the Bears. They beat them today 35-16. They beat them earlier in the season 41-25. That was up in Lambeau. That they won today in Chicago. And in between those victories over the Bears, you're looking at a 30-16 win over the Eagles, a 31-24 win over the Lions, a 24-16 win over the Carolina Panthers, and a 40-14 win over the Titans, which is probably the most impressive one out of them all. but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight wins for the Packers now, heading into this this postseason. And you have to look at the fact that they're going to have the first round bye. So with us still waiting to see who the Bucs will play, and obviously we'll have plenty of time this week on the Monday and the Wednesday podcast to talk about the Bucs' first round playoff opponent. Who do you guys like in the matchups that we do know in the NFC? Which let's start first with the Saints and the Bears.
Well, the Saints.
Yeah, it's not even close.
I don't have a lot to say. I don't have a lot to say about that. The Bears were 8-8 and got in, man. I mean, the NFC that 7 seed did not work out for the NFC at all. It worked out great for the AFC because they would have had 2 like 11-5, 10-6 teams out of the playoffs if they didn't have that 7 seed. It did not work in the NFC. The Saints should roll the Bears.
They should, but I also said they should have, rolled over the Vikings last year as well too.
Sure.
But I also thought the Packers would beat the 49ers last year too. The Packers were 13-3 in the regular season last year, and the 49ers smoked them in that championship game. So, what you're saying, John, is each game is its own game. I mean, you can't go by. It starts now. I mean, a new season starts tonight, and we'll see. But I think the Saints they're clearly better than the Bears. But I mean, I would not want to have to be the guy. I mean, I'm glad I'm not a better on playoff football games, because it can be pretty I don't know the right word. What I'm trying to say, unpredictable is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And the thing too is Trubisky. The blooms off that rose real quick. I mean, he had no touchdowns, 1 interception against the Packers in that loss.
He had one completion over 10 yards like through 3 quarters. I mean, he was throwing at 70% completion percentage, but they were all quick little dump balls, dink and dunk things. And he did hit a couple deep balls later on, but they're just not a very good football team. And the Saints defense is for real. They're better defense this year than they were last year when they did lose to the
best defense in the NFC for sure, I think.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And I think they had 5 interceptions today too. Granted, it wasn't against a good quarterback, but when you look at defense, that's really how the Rams won today without Jared Goff. They knocked Kyler Murray out of the game, and then Murray came back, I guess, towards the end. But they got a safety, a pick 6. It was that defense that really kept the Rams in this game and really secured them a playoff spot. So they're going to be playing Seattle, I'm supposing, without Jared Goff. So a quick look at that. The Rams and the Seahawks split this year. Obviously, Goff played in both of those games, but you had a loss at LA for Seattle, 23-16. So the Rams won that game. But then just a couple weeks ago, on the 27th of December, the Seahawks returned the favor, beating the Rams 20-9 up there in Seattle. So your thoughts on the third matchup between the Rams and Seahawks?
I mean, it depends on who's playing and who's not playing, I guess. I mean, if Goff is going to be out, then I think it's Seattle easily in that football game, because the Rams backup looked awful today. In the little bit that I was watching while we were working on stories, he just wasn't able to do a whole lot. But they won with their defense, like you said today, Scott. And so the defense is still really good. But I think you have to score points in the playoffs. I mean, I love the people who say defense wins championships, and there's an argument that can be made. But we also saw a Buccaneer defense that was number 1 in the league for like 8 years in a row, or top 10 or top 5 for at least that long, and they won 1 Super Bowl. I mean, you've got to score points. I mean, they lost 11-5 to was it 11-5? Was that the championship game against the Rams, Scott? When the Rams scored late with the Kurt Warner pass to Ricky Prohl. I mean, you got to score points in the playoffs, and the Rams are not going to score enough points in the playoffs if Jared Goff's not playing quarterback.
I think that Seattle should be favored in the game, but I mean, Sean McVay has typically done very well against Seattle, and so it's an interesting game because of that. I know they lost the last time they played, but Jared Goff was really horrible, and so I really do think if Jared Goff's healthy and if Jared Goff plays well, the Rams will win that game, even though Seattle might be favored. Seattle just offensively looks totally out of sorts right now, and they have for an extended period of time, really. When they weren't playing, I think the Jets, they blew up. But
it was actually 11. mark in that NFC Championship.
Yeah, 11-6. John, what do you know about predicting games? I mean, you were only 15-1 in the Pewter Report preview and predictions this year. So I don't want anybody. Don't take John's advice. He doesn't know what he's talking about when he's predicting games.
You actually got one wrong this year, John. Damn it.
I know. There's the Bears game too. It's the friggin' Bears game.
Yeah, I've done this for 25 years. I've never been 15-1. So that's up, man. That's outstanding.
Luck.
There's a little bit of luck involved with that, but I appreciate it, guys. It was fun. I mean, I honestly, we'll see. We got to keep it going. That's the thing. Now the pressure's really on. Like, I got to pick the playoff games right. And so, this first round, I'm going to be looking at everything in this first round. But, football, like I've said, is a game of matchups more than anything. It's how teams match up with each other. And that's why even when Seattle's been better than the Rams, the Rams have just matched up really well with them and been able to beat what Seattle does really well. They've got a great scheme to be able to counter what Seattle does. Seattle, actually, their defense not totally dissimilar in terms of coverage from a lot of what the Bucs do, except Seattle presses and the Bucs don't press very much, but a lot of the same single high concepts and a lot of, cover one, cover three. And so that's why the Rams came out and had so much success against the Bucs too. And so I think that the Seahawks have started to change some things that they've done, but the Rams defense is so good, guys. I mean, so good. That's why I was really hoping the Rams would play the Saints first round, man. I really wanted. I was hoping they might be able to, because that defense is. I mean, they scored 10 points today, 9 points today, I think, by themselves. I mean, they had a pick six, they had a safety. I mean, they were great. So
they blocked a field goal.
Blocked a field goal. Like, they just have great.
Yeah.
I think they're really well coached, so they have a chance to beat Seattle for sure. That would make it interesting, because that would mean if the Bucs win, and we're obviously getting ahead of ourselves, but if the Bucs win and the Rams win and the Saints take care of business against the Bears, that would mean that the Bucs would play the Saints in the next round, and the Rams would play the Packers.
Yeah, and the Rams would play the Packers. So yeah,
Saints times 3.
Yep.
I don't know.
The interesting thing too is worth pointing out. We were concerned about Ryan Suckup missing those kicks. He missed 2 extra points and a field goal up in Detroit. Uncharacteristic.
You were worried about it. Well, we weren't, Scott. It was only you.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
No, I'm just kidding. It was actually me. It was actually me. You made excuses for him. I was like, oh God, here we go. But so hell of a bounce back.
Ryan Suckup, perfect today. 3 of 3 field goals, 4 of 4 on, actually 5 of 5 on the extra points. Yeah, 5 touchdowns today by the Bucs offense. So so a perfect showing for him. And we talked about how the Buccaneers broke the franchise record with 492 points. And listen, Suckup was a big part of that. I don't have the numbers handy, but he did surpass Matt Bryant in 2008 for the most points by any Buccaneer. So Ryan Suckup in his first year in Tampa, it's not just Tom Brady breaking records, folks. Ryan Suckup having the best year of any kicker in Bucs history. And boy, they needed it, right, Mark? I mean, you and I have been there watching a dozen or more kickers in Jason Light's tenure alone come through, whether it was trades or big free agent signings or in-season signings or draft picks, just swing and miss so many times. But for them to have not just the greatest quarterback in Buccaneer history, Tom Brady, coming through this year, the halls of one Buccaneer place, but also Ryan Suckup is phenomenal, because Suckup played a huge role, obviously, in helping the Bucs break that points record. He broke the single season points record all by himself.
But what I was thinking today, watching games today, Scott, I realized the Buccaneers lost 2 games this year because of kickers that they let go. Cairo Santos hits a field goal. Yep. And then Matt Gay of all people comes in that Rams game and makes it the 27-24 final score in that game. Jesus, it's bad enough they have bad luck, then they let guys go and they come back and beat this football team. So anyway, I don't know. I don't even know. Is Matt Gay still with the Rams? I'm not sure.
He is, yes. They got let go of their other kicker and they kept him. He's been
gosh.
great, I think, for them. So yeah, I mean, he was not like a horrible play. Like, he wasn't like a Guayo. Like, Gay's season wasn't like a Guayo. Like, there was a lot of promise there. It was just a couple games where he fell apart, and that could still happen. So, but my point, guys, that I kept coming back to watching this game and really thinking about just this season, I just don't know how does anyone win Executive of the Year over Jason Light? I mean, how? Like, how could he brought in Tom Brady, brought in Rob Gronkowski, like brought in Ryan Suckup, even Antonio Brown. Like, look at how big that move was today, and we'll see if he can obviously stay on the straight and narrow. But that move. Just the draft picks. The way he built the secondary, and this year's draft, Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield. Yep. Ridiculous offseason. This guy had an all-time offseason. Tyler Johnson's player. Even Keyshawn Vaughn looks like he can tie his shoes.
He needed it, though. He needed it because, 2016 will still haunt him a little bit. And when you listen, the fact that he survived 3 head coaching changes and having the overall number 1 draft pick in Jameis Winston and that not working, that just doesn't happen. In football. That just doesn't happen. So, he needed this year to go good. He was due to have some good fortune. And you know what? A lot of that goes to his guys too, John Spytek and Beal and some of those other guys in that front office that really
Mike Greenberg too. Mike Greenberg. Oh, yeah. Listen, I think one of Jason Light's best moves was keeping Mike Greenberg, the Bucs capologist. I call him the cap wizard because this guy has kept Tampa Bay at a salary cap hell the entire time he's been here. And he was originally a Mark Dominic hire. So I think that was one of the best moves that the Light made was to keep Greenberg. Those guys had done a phenomenal job, not just in helping the Bucs salary cap, but doing these key restructures that have freed up money when needed.
Right.
And the contract extensions, right? They've not allowed anybody that they've really wanted to keep leave Tampa Bay. And they've redone Levante David. They're going to redo Levante again. Re-up him. There's been a lot of accolades that Jason Light deserves. And you know who else deserves some praise? The Glaziers. They got knocked a lot for going through this Rolodex of coaching hires, right? 2 or 3 years tops. Raheem Morris got 3 years, then he was done. Schiano got 2 years, he was done. Lovie Smith got 2 years, he was done. Dirk Cutter got 3 years, he was done. And a lot of people lamented at the fact that the Glaziers kept burning and churning these coaches and not allowing for continuity. But the thing is, guys, when you don't have the right guy at the top of the organization, it messes everything up. There's got to be that GM and head coach have got to be in sync.
Right.
And then they made the smart move by sticking with the right guy, which is the Light guy. Jason Light was the right guy, and it took a long time. But if you go back and look at the roster that Light inherited, it was Levante David, Doug Martin, Vincent Jackson, and Gerald McCoy, and that was really about it in terms of players that were really worth the damn. 4 guys, and 2 on offense, 2 on defense, and Jackson was aging, and I'm just very happy for Jason Light. He's really been through the ringer, but it all paid off. And you look at the moves he made: trading for Jason Pierre-Paul, luring Bruce Arians out of retirement, signing Tom Brady. That's just like the pinnacle. Those are the top moves. But then there's been a plethora of moves, all the way down to getting Ross Cockrell in season, who's been a tremendous addition.
Or Russ, as I and Chris Myers call him a lot. Chris Myers called him Russ today, by the way, on the TV broadcast. You probably missed that, but and listen, he brought in Alan Cross. Come on. That's a hell of a move by Jason Light. Seriously though, Jason Light has brought in guys. Everybody wants to put a feather in the cap for the top draft picks that make it, but he's brought in some role players. The year that he brought Joe Hawley in here, Godster Cherilus. Making the move on DeMar Dotson. He could have easily kept DeMar for one more year, right? DeMar wanted to stay here, would have played for pretty cheap, but he made that tough decision to move on and to draft a rookie tackle that is a gamble. It really is a gamble when you're drafting offensive linemen. Hats off to him and his whole staff.
And been perfect, but at the end of the day, the Glaziers showed patience with him.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, he deserved the patience. They weren't patient with the coaches that couldn't get the results on the field. And sometimes they didn't have all the players. It's been a work in progress. Rome wasn't built in a day. But boy, fellas, 11-5.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's only happened a couple of times in franchise history.
Right. It's pretty great. I was looking back through some of the articles before the season. I like to go back and look and what was my process in thinking about this team, and did they do what I expect them to do and things like that. And if you guys remember, I wrote an article predicting the offensive production. Do you remember this? I was writing an article predicting the offensive production. So it kind of popped in my head the other day. I went back and looked, And here's the final count. Now, this was before the final game. So now we've got the final count here. Okay, you ready? Yep. Tom Brady, I predicted 585 attempts, 374 completions. He ended up with 401 attempts, so 16 more attempts than I had. Okay. And 610 attempts, which was 25 more attempts than I had. 401 completions, which was 16 completions more than I had. So I had him at about the same completion percentage that he ended up at, which was 65.7%. I had him at 4,600 yards. He finished with 4,633 yards. So I was just off on that one. I had him at 33 touchdowns, which I thought was optimistic. He got 40 touchdowns. Had him at 11 interceptions, and Scotty Miller screwed it up and ended up gave him 12 for the season. Had him at 7.8 yards per attempt. He was at 7.6 yards per attempt, so tiny bit under what I had for yards per attempt. And then it's the same thing with the position guys, the skill guys. Mike Evans had him at 75 catches. He ended up with 70 catches. Had him at 1,006. He ended up with 1,006 yards. I had him at 1,152 yards. And I had him at 7 touchdowns. He ended up almost doubling that with 13. Would have had 14 if he hadn't gotten hurt on that play today. Godwin's projections were right around what I had him. I had him at 7 touchdowns. He caught 7. Scotty Miller was the one that it looked like he was going to blow early on in the season. I was like, he's going to blow out my projections. And he still did kind of. He ended up with 501 yards on the season. So he did pass that 500 mark, and I predicted him only for 353. So it's kind of fun to look back. But the one that caught my eye was obviously O.J. Howard. 51 catches, 707 yards was my prediction for him. And he was about on pace for that when he was hurt. But then it was kind of a plethora of guys stepping up and replacing that production, obviously, Antonio Brown being the main one. But it was Tyler Johnson for a while as well, and even some of the backs. And, Gronkowski was almost exactly what I thought before the season. If he was 40 catches I had him at 40 catches for 520 yards and 6 touchdowns. He ended up with 45 catches for 623 yards. So 100 yards more than I even thought that he did. And I think that was the one people ragged on me the most for. And he had 1 touchdown more than I had 2. So numbers weren't too bad, weren't too crazy off, but it was fun to look back and kind of like see what the projections were for this offense and see in many ways how they superseded that. I mean, you can't say enough, like Aaron said in today's presser, about what they've done without the practice time that they needed, with bringing in a new key piece in AB. Like, it's pretty wild. I mean, what this group's done is pretty wild, and now we've got a chance to, can they do it in the playoffs? That's what's going to be the key, and that's what we'll be able to talk about all week on the show. Obviously, 7:30 will be on Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Make sure you guys are tuning in. You'll go into the Pewter Report TV on YouTube, hitting the subscribe button. We're getting up there in subscribers, and we love it. We appreciate it. But remember, even after the playoffs do end and the Bucs season does end, whatever that looks like, we're going to be still on here 4 days a week. We're going to be talking NFL draft. We're going to be talking combine, whatever that looks like. We don't even know yet. All those kind of things. We'll be talking about Senior Bowl. All that stuff will be brought to you here. And we'll have tons of guests too. So you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed and that you've got the notifications going, and you're able to kind of run through those shows with us, because we're going to have a really fun time on the show. So it's that time, fellas. We got to get our game balls going, right?
Well, and you know what? I'm going to say this from a personal standpoint. I'll give you my Bucs game balls in a minute. Okay. From my personal standpoint, I think Briar Greaves deserves a game ball, John. I really do. And Mark, you're the one who told me about Briar Greaves beforehand. And listen, the reason why they're getting a game ball is because my homeowner's policy was in jeopardy. I had a couple of incidents around, the structure of my house that needed to get resolved. And Briar Greaves told me exactly what needed to happen. And I switched policies, switched companies, and I made the right call. A lot of homeowner companies are canceling. They're not renewing their policies. They're leaving Florida. Some of those companies are just off and left Florida. And some of them have increased their premiums significantly. So I did what Mark Cook told me to do. I called Briar Greaves. I spoke directly on a couple of occasions to Briar and Sam for that personalized touch of information and getting the scoop on the best rates. And the thing is when I say personal touch, when I email Briar or Sam, guess what happens, Mark? They email you
back. Right back, yes.
Right back. I mean,
they're actually in the office working on a daily basis. They're not on the golf course 5 days a week.
it's like within the hour. That
Right.
Like if I want to get a hold of them, I email them, I pick up the phone, and I'm talking to them, not the representatives, the people
Right.
who own the company. Briar Greaves Insurance, family owned and operated in the Tampa Bay area for over 30 years, serving the Bay Area with homeowners insurance, auto owners insurance, boat owners insurance, life insurance, commercial insurance, and even flood insurance, which we need, especially if you're in a high-risk area living by the coast, because we're living on a big sandbar here in the state of Florida. The folks at Briar Greaves, as we've talked about before, John and Mark, they're big Buccaneer fans. So that's the cool thing. You get to pick up the phone, and I know insurance can be kind of boring and dull and drab, and nobody wants to talk about it or pay for it, but these guys will help you save money, get you insured, and they'll talk Bucs football with you. How cool is that? They're proud sponsors of the Pewter Report podcast and on pewterreport.com. Visit briargreavesinsurance.com. Just click on the website. Go check it out yourself, and then let us know what you think about that in the comments. Or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166, briargreavesinsurance.com. Game balls.
Game balls. I'm going to go first because I have a radio thing at 8:40, so I've got to be out of here in 10 minutes. But I'm going to go first on this. And my first game ball is going to go to I'm going to give it to Mike Evans, not just because he set the tone early in that game, but just a guy that's deserved to see where the Buccaneers are. He's helped this team. He's a guy that has bent over backwards to help the team salary cap wise. It's not just what he does on the football field, but for breaking the NFL record. And I was telling somebody earlier, this isn't just a Buccaneer record or just an NFC record. This is in the history of the NFL. I appreciate Mike Evans for what he's done. Obviously, Brady, Gronk. I mean, not Brady, Gronk. AB, Godwin. Those guys, you guys can pick them. But I'm going to go Mike Evans on the offensive side. Defensively, I'm going to give it to Sean Murphy-Bunting. I know people are kind of giving him a hard time, and Johnny's grimacing at that a little bit. And he'll break down the film and point out that he gave up.
It's not about Sean. It's not about Sean. I thought you were going to give it to a certain linebacker who is really good today.
Oh, yeah, Kevin Minter. You're right. That led the team in tackles. You're right. Yep. Just goes to show you. Linebackers are all interchangeable, fellas. But no, Sean Murphy-Bunting with a bounce-back game. And I listen, I'm knocking on wood right here. That strip, fumble, whatever it was, the fact that he played better today, that he didn't give up a touchdown pass in this game is the catalyst that pushes him to play better. He doesn't have to be an all-star, an all-pro, or a Pro Bowler in the playoffs. He's just got to be better than he has been this year. And hopefully having Carlton Davis back gives the Buccaneers more flexibility in that secondary, and they do play better. So those are my game balls. Ryan Suckup always gets a game ball from me. Also.
All right. So, but my game balls are going to go to, on offense, Antonio Brown.
Wow.
Scott hates AB, won't give him the game ball. No, that's not true. I just wanted AB to produce. I just didn't like that he was catching about 8 yards or getting about 8 yards per catch when he first got to Tampa. Now,
he still messes up a lot of vertical routes.
But he's not calling the plays, Scott. I mean, he catches what they tell him to
but he wasn't doing a lot with the ball once he got it in his hands. And now we've seen that run after the catch. We've seen that vintage AB, and it really showed on that 30-yard catch and run to end the scoring for the Buccaneers. That final touchdown, 11 catches today, a season high, 138 yards to lead all receivers. 30-yard touchdown, had another 25-yard touchdown, which actually was a pass, looked like the Scotty Miller. AB said, nope, thank you. I'm getting now in 2 touchdowns for Antonio Brown. Really stepped up today when the Bucs needed him without Mike Evans. Just like Bruce Arians said, if Mike can't go, we're going to put AB at the slot, and we're going to keep on trucking. And that's exactly what happened today. On the defensive side of the ball, I am going to go with Kevin Minter. I thought he stepped in. And very much like Devin White, he's not nearly the splash player that White is. Doesn't have that sideline-to-sideline speed, but he is a north-south kind of guy. Not the best in coverage, but 9 tackles today. He was a steady Eddie. There wasn't a huge drop-off in terms of tackling. I didn't like the soft zone that the Bucs played. I think a lot of that was due to the fact that Carlton Davis didn't play. But and you could say that there was the touchdown. Where he didn't get enough depth on the Hayden Hurst. There was a play-action pass down there on 4th down. Other than that, though, I like Kevin Minter. I thought he did a credible job stepping in, leading the way with 9 tackles. Other than that, I didn't like a lot of what the Bucs did defensively at all. So maybe I'm picking the tallest midget out of the bunch here, but Kevin Minter gets my game ball.
Tallest little person, Scott.
Sorry, little person.
Christian Peterson says here, not giving Brady the game ball, you actually just try to be a hipster. If there's one word I could use to describe you guys, it would definitely be hipster. That's definitely the one.
Yeah.
Scott and I are the farthest thing from the hipster. That was Trevor. That's definitely not us.
Yeah.
I think Mark and I, we're like Clint Eastwood from El Camino. Get off my lawn. I think we're in that stage of life.
But Christian is right about this. Brady is definitely getting my game ball. I mean, Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin were outstanding. But he's right. If it wasn't for Evans, I understand why he dropped it. I'm not blaming him for it, but that's a touchdown. If Cam Brate doesn't fall out of his break, he was going to dust that guy. Like, I think that's a touchdown. Brady threw it with perfect timing, and that would have been 6. And so he's been unbelievable.
It's just too easy to give it to Brady. I mean, that's just too obvious of a choice.
It is, but like at the same time, that's why I feel like I need to give it to him, because we take Brady for granted. We only talk about him when he's bad. You know what I mean? And he was brilliant today. And we don't even talk about the offensive line. I mean, I know it's not sexy to talk O-line on this stuff, but I mean, how ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous was the offensive line. It was ridiculous today. I mean, Falcons blitzed a ton over and over again in the second half. Didn't matter. Like, nobody got through. I mean, even Fournette was blocking well today. Like,
hey, we saw Brady have 5 carries today for 3 yards, but at least he moved around the pocket.
Yeah,
John,
moved around the pocket.
We're watching in the press box. We thought, is Brady going to take off and try to run for the first down?
I mean, Brady's throw on the move to Antonio Brown, I mean, maybe it was to Scotty Miller. It didn't matter. Like, it was a perfect ball to either of them. And I mean, he is 43 years old. He just threw 40 touchdowns without an offseason in a brand new offense that everybody said he couldn't play in, and that people said he was washed 4 or 5 weeks ago. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like, we'll never see it again. We'll never see anything like what Brady is again. I really don't think we will. Not in terms of just, like, I think we'll see other quarterbacks as good as his peak play, maybe not as successful as his peak play, winning the Super Bowls that he did, but we'll see other quarterbacks play at his level, but not to the age. I mean, the age and the way that he's cared for his body, I mean, it's unbelievable to watch him. Physically, I'm telling you, there's no drop-off in ability. Yeah. Physically, there just isn't. The league has changed. It's made it harder for pocket passers, which in a lot of ways makes what he's doing even more completely absurd. There are not a lot of pocket passers that are eating it up in the NFL today, and Brady is absolutely eating it. I mean, he has been phenomenal this season. So he gets my game ball. I thought he was unbelievable in this game. Defensively, you're right, Scott. I mean, there was not a lot to get excited about in this game. Levante David was great, though. I know I always end up picking him. I can't believe you picked Kevin Minter over Levante. I was trying to think of who I'd pick if you picked Levante David and Kevin. But Levante David had a big.
I was going to set Levante up for you, John. That's
I know. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Ndamukong Suh had a decent game too.
Yeah, I just can't give it to anybody because the pass rush. But it was just so bad. But I mean, but I thought David early in the game slashed through, tackle for no gain, lost a half yard, whatever. Tackle for loss later in the game, stripped receiver. I think it was Brian Hill and a 3-yard pass over the middle. Stripped him, and the Bucs should have recovered, didn't recover, and the Falcons recovered. But he continues to be one of those guys that, I know I'm going to say it, make splash plays. The tackles for loss and the strips, I think, are something. Again, we just saw Levante with a strip on a tackle for loss last week. Like, those plays change a game in the playoffs. I mean, they change a game. They change the course of a. So I still think he's that type of player. And you were ragging me a little bit, Scott, in the press box, because he did give up the almost touchdown on that. Was that a fourth? I think it was a 4th down. He had a Hayden Hurst that they ended up calling back because he was down at the 1 and they scored anyway. But he was right there in coverage and just missed the ball. And that's the same thing that happened with Jordan Whitehead with Hayden Hurst back in week 15 or whatever. But anyway, it was another performance by David, I thought, that gives me a lot of hope that this Bucs defense, they are going to need somebody to make a play. I think Carlton can be that guy. I think Levante can be that guy. And then it's a matter of which pass rusher can one of those pass rushers step up and be the guy. They need guys like that because they're not good enough to just hold teams
Levante
to 200 yards.
Levante, we haven't seen nearly as many splash plays as we have, but he's got a couple in his back pocket. I think he's going to pull out as January rolls on.
Remember, he dropped 2 picks, the Denver game and the Giants game. Right. He dropped them straight up.
The Pewter Report podcast is going to roll on tomorrow night, 7:30. We're going to have the latest news with the Mike Evans situation on pewterreport.com. So be sure to check out the website. More post-game coverage coming up on pewterreport.com. And, of course, we'll find out after the conclusion of the Washington-Philadelphia Sunday night game who the Bucs will play. And more importantly, when will they play next week? And will they get Devin White back from the COVID list? So, John, I know it'll be less than 24 hours. We'll be doing this again, and we'll have a full reaction from Bruce Arians tomorrow to discuss, plus an update on the injury situation. And we want to thank all of you out there in Pewter Nation for checking out the Pewter Report podcast tonight and for our content. We're having a record day on PewterReport.com. It's blowing up. And obviously, Buccaneer fans are happy this team is 11-5 and playoff bounds. We will talk to you tomorrow. And again, this whole week, primetime podcast, 7:30 Monday night, 7:30 Wednesday, where John and I will be back for our Pewter Report preview podcast. Will it be Washington? Will it be the New York Giants in a rematch? We'll have more on that tomorrow. And then Thursday night, John will be on with the guest to be determined. So we want to thank you all for subscribing to us on YouTube at Pewter Report TV. For John Ledyard and Mark Cook, I'm Scott Reynolds saying we'll see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.